I'm Justin. Welcome to Cashman's Garage. Today, we're going to be replacing the clutch and the pressure plate and the throwout bearing on this 2013 Ford Fiat 500. Should be a whole lot of fun. Let's get started. So our first step is to remove both the front wheels, and we're going to want to take out the axles. So to take out the axles, I find that a little screwdriver bit works pretty well, but you want to unbink these things. And this way the nut comes off the end of the CV shaft, nice and easy. And up here, we're going to take off our two strut mounting bolts, and hopefully that'll give us enough wiggle room to get these axles out. So we're going to do that on the passenger side here, and we're going to do the same thing on the driver's side. So, gotta love a Fiat. Can't even get past the first step. So it turns out my 35mm axle nut socket here is just a little bit too thick to fit into that little slot there. So what I'm going to do here is actually take my grinding wheel, shave off a little bit here, and hopefully that'll give me enough clearance to get these axle nuts out. Let's continue on. So as you can see here, I chewed up this perfectly good socket to make it better for our application here. So now, you should be able to get this. And that's how you're going to pop these guys out. Well, so far, so good. So, with our two strut mounting bolts out of the way, and pull this little ABS sensor out of the little rubber guys around here, we have just enough room to get both axles out of our hub assemblies, or bearings, or knuckles, or spindles, whatever you want to call them. And now we just got to get these axles out of the transmission. Then we can move forward. So usually what I would use is a slide hammer, and of course my flashlight's going out, but all the way in the back where it meets our transmission, we're going to pop these guys out. Doesn't look like we have any center support bearing or anything to deal with, so should be nothing to it. Let's continue forward. Alright guys, so our next step here, you're going to want to remove the battery. It's fairly simple. You have this guy here. Want to loosen up this nut, whole thing twists off. Do the same thing on your positive side over here. Once that's done, you got a couple options. I can't get these stupid connectors off our ECM here. So there's 4 nuts on the back, which I put the nuts back on the studs that these go on to. There's 4 of them. They're tough to get to, but if you take those off, you should be able to pull this whole thing up after you get your 3 bolts. This one's kind of hard to see down in there, but you take those 3 out. This guy should wiggle right out, no problem. So I'm going to do that, and hopefully we can see our transmission. Alright, so now with our battery tray out of the way, we can kind of see our transmission. First thing I notice is this mount is pretty big, so I'm going to come down here, and it looks like we're going to have to remove this support bar. And you can see we got our transmission hanging on a mount. Kind of goes up here, got a bolt there, another bolt somewhere up there. But still need to get these axles out. So I took a pry bar, well, body panel trim removal tool, and a screwdriver. Managed to get both edges of this, so we can yank our CV shaft out. Now I made the mistake. I already pulled this thing out and lost a little bit of fluid. So yeah, if you're doing this, make sure you got some new trans fluid, and have a pan ready. I want to pull out the other side. So I had to get really clever with that passenger side axle. To get it out, didn't really have enough room for a pry bar, broke one of them, so I took this little CV axle remover. Typically use it with a slide hammer. I had to grind out the inside to make just enough room, and when I popped it in there, I moved it, and it came out. We got lucky. So we're going to move on to our next step. We're going to hop under the car from the front, and we're going to look right under here, and we got our starter. I think that's going to be the next step, as well as we got this bracket here on the driver's side. This is going to have to go, so our transmission's going to be coming out this way. And then, if you look, I removed the bar. Sorry about the lighting, but there was a bar that went from here to here on the driver's side. 2 bolts, it was really simple. I removed that as well. So let's get the starter out, and we'll go from there. So this starter is a whole lot of fun. So you can see here, should have 2 bolts on the side here. One was missing in this case. And then you got one up here for your electrical connection. Now, you'll take those off and you'll notice this thing still is not gonna come out easy. So you actually have to come up from the top. And there is a 3rd bolt, as you can see, with their battery box off. Right down here on the bell housing, there's one more bolt. It's in a funky spot here, but if you start to loosen that, that starter's going to drop right out. So you're going to do that and continue on. So as you can see, after we got those bolts out, starter slipped right out, no problem. Now, our next step, I think we're going to take off this little crossbar here. That looks fairly simple. And I'm thinking this bar that goes across here, if we take that out, that should give us enough room for our transmission jack. And then we got a mount here, and then we got all our bell housing bolts, as well as a couple, like I think a shift cable and some other nonsense up here. So this might take a while. All right, we're moving right along here. So you can see we got 2 bolts for a bracket down here. Took those off. We're gonna have to take our slave cylinder here off so that we can get our, if you look at that green guy right there, that is that's a green ground wire, ground strap. Then you're gonna go all the way in the back here. And of course you can't see it. You're just gonna have to believe me on this one, but there's a bracket that holds our shift cable. We're going to have to take that off, and hopefully with that off we should be able to kind of start working on our bell housing. So far so good. We took off the 3 bolts for the bracket that holds our shift cables. Then to get the shift cables out, I just took a little wrench and these guys pulled right off. So that frees up, of course, a terrible view here. This guy here is all loosened up. It's no longer attached to anything past the bell housing, so that should get us to where we need to be. So it looks like we still have our transmission bracket and a good chance I'm going to have to take out this bar. Then we can work on the bell housing and hopefully pull out this transmission. So up here at the top of the transmission, you're going to want to take off the 2 bolts for your slave cylinder. Be careful not to lose that little plastic guy. I zip tied it on there so that it's hanging for later. And then I just kind of shoved it up here just to kind of keep it out of the way. We got one more for the ground strap. And then we work on the bell housing bolts. Still debating if I should take this off. And we do have one trans mount in the back, and when we start to take that off, we're going to want to have something holding the engine and the trans mount up here. So we do have a little bit of a list of stuff to go, but I'm going to continue on rocking here. The rest is pretty straightforward. All the bolts that keep that housing together are going to have to come off. I recommend using like a piece of cardboard to kind of keep everything in order, but that's how we get everything ready to remove the trans. Well, looks like there's a lot left to do. Still going to have to take off the trans mount, the bell housing bolts. I'm going to want to get a scissor jack underneath the engine to keep everything stable. And then I got a transmission jack, and hopefully we can wiggle this thing out. So I'm going to end the video here for now. We're going to catch you on round 2 coming up next. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.